What's up, everybody? This is Coach Kramer, and if you're new to the channel, my name's Steve Kramer. I'm the owner of Kramer Basketball and also the founder of CoachesEdge.coach. I am a former overseas basketball player, a former coach, both in the U.S. and internationally. A little bit of high school coaching experience on both sides of the pond. Played my college basketball at Hope College, where I was an All-American there, and my degree is in elementary ed. And I always wanted to be a high school basketball coach and a teacher before I started my basketball business full time. I've been almost 10 years that I've been full time in player and program development. And that's what I'm really passionate about, is working with players and coaches. And so in this short presentation, I'm going to give you a peek at some of the work that we've done with our CoachesEdge.coach members. Now, I'm not going to get the entire presentation in here with you guys, but I do want to share a little bit of the beginning. And if you're curious about learning more with Coaches Edge, how we help coaches, you can go to CoachesEdge.coach or KramerBasketball.com to learn more. But we're talking about in-season player development. And what we want to continue to remind our kids is practice isn't always fun. But the more you practice, the better you're going to get. And the better you get, the more fun you're going to have. And so that in itself should be the motivation of practice being fun, being worth it, even when it's not fun. Because there's a difference between something being fun and being rewarding. And that's where we need to get ourselves to. I can do something now that's difficult and it will be rewarding later. And in this sense, kids like to use the word fun. The more you practice, the better you get. The better you get, the more fun you have. The more fun you have, the more you're going to practice. And round we go. So as a basketball coach, what are you thinking about as far as your player development? All right, what's the style of play that you have offensively and defensively? If you had to break down 2 or 3 of the most important skills for your team throughout the course of the season, what would those skills be? And ask yourself, if they're really important to you, are you practicing them on a daily basis? And then when we're thinking about that, our players come into play. The majority of us are not recruiting our high school players, or we shouldn't be, I should say. What's the style of play that you have that should be dictated by the players that you have? Right? You might be a fast breaking team for a few years, and then you might be a slower paced team for a couple of years. You might be focused on inside play for a few years. You might be focused on perimeter, 3-point shooting for different seasons because of the strengths and weaknesses of your players. But it's our job as coaches to put them in a position to succeed. I like to break players and teams down into 3 different categories: strengths, weaknesses, liabilities. We want to play to our strengths. We want to strengthen our strengths. We want to understand our weaknesses. Is there a reason why we have these weaknesses? We're still continuing to practice those. We want to emphasize our strengths. And then the third one is the liabilities. As an individual player, liabilities get you on the bench. As a team, liabilities get you beat. This is the level below weaknesses, the liabilities. Can't have liabilities. Right. And so we need to make sure that we are putting our players in a position to succeed, and then think about what those liabilities are. How can we minimize those occurrences, and how can we continue to work on our game, our strategy, our scheme enough that we're improving and that those liabilities aren't coming up as much throughout the course of a given season. Put your players in a position to succeed. Now, as I talk with different coaches so much about practice during the season, it's about, man, I wish I had more time. I wish I had more time to work on skills. I wish I had more time to work on shooting the rock. So in order for us to do those things, we have to be extremely efficient. So you may have a drill that you like to use, but if it doesn't apply to the style of play, don't do it. Don't do it, right? Kids might like it. You might like it. Doesn't apply to your style of play. Still, don't do it. Find something else that they like. Find something else that all you guys like that applies to how you play in a game. A lot of coaches talk about shortening practices throughout the course of the season. Maybe you don't shorten them. Maybe you just make some changes. Maybe at the beginning of the season, you have 2-hour practices that are more emphasizing the system that you want to play in. And as you improve upon that system throughout the course of the year, instead of shortening your practice, maybe that means you have more time for skill development, more time for shooting, more time for one-on-one play. In order to be efficient, you pick a theme for your practice, right? What are 1 or 2 things that you can really emphasize in your practices? And then what's the focus of our practice? Chris is saying, who was on our Coach's Edge podcast, if you get the chance, if you're watching this and you want hundreds of podcast episodes, we have a growing podcast called Coach's Edge. It's got a bright green CE logo. Check out Coach's Edge podcast. That's a good one. And in one of our episodes with her, she talks about practice types, teaching, training, competing, and how we can mix those in throughout the course of a practice. And at the same time, a practice may have a certain theme. Maybe it's you want to have a lighter practice physically. You want to give some information out to the kids, maybe for a game coming up. Be a teaching-based practice for the most part. Maybe you want to get a lot of shooting in, repetitions, skill work, small-sided games. I call that more of a training practice. And then a competing-based practice, you're not coaching as much. They're playing a lot. We don't want to put these in big chunks. We want to sprinkle them in throughout the course of the practice, but they can still have a theme that falls into one of these 3 categories. Now, I could talk all day about block practice, randomized practice. I get asked that. That's a subject that comes up with, everybody's looking for different types of drills. And what do I like? Yes. And it depends. Different players, teams have different needs. And so that's the fun part of coaching, is using different drills, using different practice types so that our players can continue to grow and improve. If you have kids that don't know the game, they don't know how to hold the ball, they don't understand certain basketball movements that are more effective, I'd probably recommend blocking some of that out and just working on your feet or your hands or what certain types of pivots look like, instead of saying, hey, figure it out. Here's a small sided game. Have at it. You're going to get good at doing things the wrong way. So if you have players that understand certain basic skills such as that, I would throw in more of the randomized small sided games. And these are all relative, right? There's different levels of random play. Even with block, there's block, you could get things that are more variable practice, right? Where they're not doing the same thing 10 times in a row. They might shoot a catch and shoot in a corner, and then a pull up going middle, and then run to the opposite corner, catch a shoot there, and then get a pull up. And so those are 4 different shots, 4 different spots. They're not doing the same thing again and again and again, even though there's not a decision to be made. They're working on different types of skills, shot types, right? You get more advanced with that. A defensive closeout drill into jumping off the ball, playing the gap, and then, now you're on offense, come off the ball, get a handoff, go in and score, right? A lot of different skills that we're working on, something like that. That would be variable, right? And then you got your reps and your reads. This can be more random. And then you build that up into live play. But I think that it's important for us to sprinkle in a variety while also understanding the needs of our players, right? Our player may be making really good decisions as far as how they're shooting the basketball, but if their mechanics are way off, we just need to break things down and ask ourselves, what's the biggest thing holding them back from being better? Is it their decision of when to shoot or pass or dribble? Or is it the fact that their mechanics are really messed up and we need to fix some of that? And now they're going to be able to execute better in the game. If their mechanics are pretty good, it's the decision-making of when to shoot. Then we're going to put in more random game situation drills and help them build from there, right? Everybody's different. But I don't want us to overthink this. If we're getting a high amount of repetitions in, with intensity level that is conducive to being successful in a game, and what we're working on actually applies to the game, we can get improvement. But it needs to have all three. If you're working hard and it applies to the game, but you're rarely getting any repetitions in, probably not going to get much better. You could be getting a lot of reps. We see this with certain, trainers, a lot of reps, high intensity, not a ton of game application. You see a ton of reps of kids doing a bunch of step back jump shots, but most of the high school basketball coaches that I know hate it when their kids shoot step back jump shots. So which one is it? Right? The game application piece wasn't there, not to what that high school basketball coach wants. Right? So there's a divide. So we want to make sure that it's all three of these different things. And then I can't emphasize enough the fact that competing should be the majority of our practice. It could be a shooting drill. It could be a one-on-one. It could be 5-on-5, a defensive drill. It doesn't have to be everything, because there's a lot of times where we simply need to teach and rep. But if we're doing that and we're not adding the competition, what is basketball? What is a basketball game? It's competition. All right. So if we're not keeping time, score, reps, we're losing one of the things that makes basketball, and that's competing. There is a winner and there is a loser. We need to have a winner and a loser many, many times throughout the course of a practice. A couple of my pet peeves as we finish this out. If you're doing a basic 3-man weave, not a big fan of that. Do something that's more like what you would actually run in a game. The pregame warm-up, which in our full presentation, I get into what a pregame warm-up could look like. Instead of the shoot around, have the kids coming in and working on their game. Form shooting, playing one-on-one until coach brings everybody in, they start practice. Wait until the end of scrimmage throughout. Could be 1-on-1, 3-on-3, 5-on-5, small-sided game, advantage, disadvantage. Don't save that for the end. That's the point of basketball, is to play 5-on-5, full court, if you're a high school basketball team, right? So don't wait until the end to do those different things, right? So those are just a few. And in our full presentation at coachesedge.coach, you can get access to our entire presentation. I break down our 15-minute pre-practice warm-up. I talk about how you can use your pre-practice warm-up and integrate that into what some one-on-one, some competitive situations. I always say practice starts when you come into the gym, not when coach calls everybody in or blows the whistle, or however your coach starts practice. Practice starts when you're laced up and you're in the gym. So can we give our kids an opportunity to play the game, to improve their skills before we've even started practice officially? That's what I want to do. And then from there, we're almost just flowing right into practice because of some of the pre-practice work that we put in. I think that's a great way to ease into practice, a great flow. It also gives coaches the opportunity to touch base with the kids, see how they're doing while they're getting some of their pre-practice work in. That could be ball handling, finishing, shooting, a dynamic warm-up, and even so much as putting in, okay, you finish the series, find a teammate or two and play one of our one-on-one games until we start. That's a great way to improve player development, play some one-on-one. So I hope you guys found that beneficial. If you have any questions about our camps that we run in the Midwest, down in South Carolina, or our Coaches Edge membership, serving coaches around the nation, let me know. You can email me, contact@currentbasketball.com. Thanks. Get after it today.